home of the stars, through the airwaves and on the big screen. Coming to you live from Hollywood, it's Rated G Radio with your host, Garrett Miller.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a fresh new week. It's a holiday week here at Rated G Radio. We're going to have a fun week. I'm still trying to decide what we're going to do on Thanksgiving. I know I'm going to do something. What that is, I don't know yet, but it's going to be happening Thursday sometime during the day. But here's a little quick preview for what's going to be taking place over the course of this week. So if you want to get your turkey on a little bit early, just get out some mashed potatoes and gravy along the way. But tonight we're going to have RJ Tolson. RJ's been on the show before, and he's going to talk about his new book called Hugh, the Southern Flame. And I've been tearing through it all day long today, and I can't wait to talk to him about that and so much more. Tomorrow we're doing we normally had Trucker Patty on. Trucker Patty's a transgendered lady that has been on the show this year, but she's got some stuff that she needs to take care of. So I've asked my buddy Rob Watson to step in. And Rob, you'll remember I either am a guest or co-host or whatever the term du jour is with him on his program called Out in Santa Cruz on KSCO 1080 AM in Santa Cruz, California, every once in a while. And Rob's going to come on the show tomorrow, and we're going to do our Tuesday LGBT update for the month of November. So I'm excited to hear what Rob has to say. He's a celebrated and highly sought-after blogger. His posts go into like the hundreds of thousands, and it's just really cool. So Rob's got a great message tomorrow. I can't wait to have him on. Wednesday, we have Psychic Lisa Pini on at a special 4 p.m. start time. That's usually Lisa's normal start time, but it's, a different start time than usual. So Lisa will be on 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Don't know what I'm doing on Thursday for Thanksgiving, but we will have a show for Thanksgiving. So just set your alarms for that. And, of course, if you're following Rated G Radio, you'll get your update on your email or text, and you can tune in accordingly. But, of course, you can always tune in on demand as well. And then on Friday, we're going to do an early Friday night dance party with a show that I pre-recorded. We pretended it's going to be a live show, but we pre-recorded it this past weekend with the band called Shotgun Holler, and they are a bluegrass quartet. I guess that's they're not really, they're just a band, but Shotgun Holler is going to be on the Friday night dance party this week, and I love their music. It's really, really cool. If you like to hear something a little different, this is different, and I think that's one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about the musical groups that we've had on this year is that we've been able to showcase so many different types of music from, Bob Dylan rock opera to bluegrass to folk to rock and to hard rock. We had that Pink Cigars on from England, what was it, last month? And the lead singer, he came in completely drunk, and we did the show at 9 a.m., California time, 5 p.m. England time, so we could make sure that the guy would be okay. But he was. But anyway, that's what's going to be happening this week on Rated G Radio. I will also tell you, we're going to be doing a special broadcast this coming Sunday, November 29th. I know that's during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but we want to let everybody know that we're going to have Brian and Sean Chrysagas back. They're, of course, the Christian singing twin brothers out of Ohio. We're going to be doing a broadcast on 10 a.m. this Sunday morning Pacific time, November 29th. We're also going to be rebroadcasting that episode on Christmas Day. So you'll have a chance to hear them a couple of times between now and the end of the year. They've got a new Christmas CD out, and I can't wait for you to hear that. And I haven't actually heard the music. I know that they were working on this CD last year around this time, and they gave me a couple of sneak peeks, but I haven't heard the entire project. So it'll be fun to hear what these guys have going on in their world, because they're always touring around, the Northeast, and and of course, Brian and Sean, they have that crazy laugh, so I love having the boys on. So, as we always say, without further ado, let's bring on our very special guest star, Mr. RJ Tolson. RJ, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Garrett.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, okay, for everybody who heard RJ when he was on, I think it was around this time last year, he is a phenomenon all to himself, and I'm going to kind of give you a quick rundown of who this brilliant superstar is, and then we're going to talk about his book that he's got out tonight. So he's had a birth. This comes off of his book called Hugh, the Southern Flame. I'm holding it in my hand right now. I've been reading it all day. So this comes off the back of the jacket, but I could tell you this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface about how cool this guy is. But it says 21. He's had a birthday. 22-year-old R.J. Tolson is an internationally award-winning author, renowned founder and CEO, inspirational speaker, philanthropist, composer, and so much more. A popular radio and TV talk show guest, he's appeared on NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, and Telemundo. He speaks 6 languages and studied metaphysics, and you hold a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, and you currently live in California. You enjoy playing with your puppy and hitting the tennis court. So that's just a tiny little bit about you. For anybody who might have missed our chat when you were on originally, what else am I missing there? What other fill-in-the-blanks do we need to include about you before we start talking about your writing and your book and all the other fun stuff that you're doing?
I don't know. It sounds like you got most things. We've got it covered.
Okay. You got it covered. So you're out on a book tour right now, and you're covering like the eastern United States. So how is the tour going?
The tour is going well. I left Miami yesterday, and I flew into New York, and Miami was pretty awesome. Great. Well, horrible weather, actually, but it was I had a great time because I won a book award, and I met a lot of people, a lot of authors, a lot of readers. It was fun.
So what was your book award that you won?
It's called Reader's Favorites. It was an honorary mention, so it wasn't like I got first place, but it was still an award, and it was for my first book, Zephyr the West Wind. And, that's what it was for a young adult.
Well, so Zephyr the West Wind kind of set the world on fire, and I love your journey on this, on the process. Well, you laugh, but it's true, because I love your strategic way about how you went about, getting Zephyr to be the success that it was. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that? Because I think that really sets the whole tone for, your path in writing, or at least I think so, because it really inspired me on how to make sure, I know who my readers are.
Yeah, I mean, Zephyr's won like 3 or 4 awards now. It's won second place a couple times, won first place once, and then it won the Reader's Favorite Award most recently. It's got its own, spin-off series, which I assume that we'll talk about anyway, and it's got a manga, it's got a comic, it's got an illustration book, and it's got its own soundtrack as well. So the combination of that stuff has really helped it be successful.
Well, before you actually publish the book, and I'm doing this only because for all the new listeners that we've had since the last time that you were on, what I really found cool about your process in doing this, RJ, is the fact that when you started writing this book when you were in high school, and you would kind of like beta test, am I doing okay? Do people like this? What's going on? With readers, and it kind of took off on a life of its own. And before the book was even published, how many cajillions of people did you have that were clamoring for more?
Yeah, so I posted it on Wattpad, the online YouTube for books, and then around the time I was writing each chapter when I was 17 and a senior in high school, I was posting these chapters online so that people could read them. And originally there was I think it was by about a quarter way through the book, there was about 40,000 people reading it. By the end of it, there was a catalog of 8 million or so, 6 to 8 million that had been actually completed reading it.
That is just crazy. So one of the things that I admire so much about you is that you juggle a lot on your plate, and we'll talk about all of that. But I think one of the things that just really stunned me the most about the Zephyr book is how many authors do you know? And I don't care if you're Stephen King or James Patterson or whoever. How many authors do you know that have a legitimate best-selling book that's on the best-selling book charts that also has a companion CD that comes out with music written by the author? So how did that go over with your fans as far as the reception and feedback that you got from that?
The soundtrack has been pretty awesome, I think, personally. As I composed it, I hope it's awesome. But I think because my fan base is generally younger and it's classical music on the soundtrack, they don't really connect with it as much, but actually it's really engaged more of my older audience. So people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who still read fantasy books and sci-fi. It's really engaged them because it's kind of just something cool to have. They usually listen to the soundtrack while they're reading the book or afterwards. And most of my younger audience just thinks it's really cool, but they're not necessarily engaged in it just because they don't listen to classical music. But it's been helpful in engaging my older audience, like I said, which has been fantastic.
So do you think that, having this available for your younger audience, even though that, it's not like hip hop or, anything that's going to be like, on the number one on Billboard or something like that on the top 100, do you think that having a different style of music that is coming out as a complementary piece to your book opens up that type of genre to, a whole new world? I mean, do you get feedback from younger kids about, hey, RJ, I listened to your CD and here's what I thought?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because we can stream the music now, so they don't actually have to buy the CD. They can just access it, essentially. A lot of them have told me they like it. It's not their primary genre, as we, usually hip-hop and pop and rap and rock are like the main genres that people listen to around their age group. But they just think it's a cool accompaniment, and especially the fact that it just has that accompaniment, that it kind of looks cooler to them and that they're more interested in it, which has been great.
So one of the things that you've really been masterful at with Zephyr, and it's, because you're building your empire and building the brand here, is that you really are strategic about how you engage with your fans online and social media. How has that impacted what you decide to do, day by day?
Social media is definitely important, as you know, nowadays, and I mean, engaging the youth is really what it's been useful for and what it's been great for. After going on tour, like, for example, like last year, and talking to kids, the way we keep them engaged is through social media, having active contests or polls and releasing stuff. So if we're doing a giveaway, we post about it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and usually we get interaction. I've been doing a bit of YouTube, producing YouTube videos, and that's been great because fans and readers also just love to see what the people that they're looking up to or they are reading about or are interested in what they're doing in their lives, like their daily lives, and it's been really great to get them engaged.
So what do you think the secret is when you're doing, let's say, a YouTube video to get your fans engaged with you, and how do you get them to keep coming back?
I think that one of the most important things that people should realize when doing stuff like this to engage fans and readers is that it's not necessarily about you, unless that is your brand, of course. It all revolves around your world, but for me, it doesn't. It revolves around the things I'm doing, which is part of me, but also I have to relate what I'm doing to my fans so that they can really understand and really want to come back and listen to more. There's only so much. So many things that you can put out there that people are going to be paying attention to that has nothing to do with them, because eventually, they'll probably get tired of it. But if you can relate it back to them in some sort of way to their lives, they'll keep coming back for more. And I think that's what I've been trying to do.
And so when you get ready to, take a look at Zephyr and say, okay, now I've got this cool CD out here of classical music that's the companion piece for this, where do I go next? I mean, the first thought that I would think is, and I'm calling it the wrong name, so correct me, but I call it like an anime book. My first thought is, well, I'm going to come up with like a something that I'll release in Japan. So how do you go from writing Zephyr, a classical CD, and then say, okay, project number 3 is going to be this type of book?
I think I originally was really interested in manga. So the anime book is called manga in Japan, MANGA, and that is the biggest publishing industry in Japan. And Japan is a very economically savvy country. And I think besides the fact that I was actually interested and I would have loved to have it myself, the goal was to hit the emerging market in Japan. And to do that, I came up with the spin-off series called True Life for Zephyr the West Wind. So it's based off of the same world. It takes place in the same world. It has different characters, which relates to Zephyr and the whole series, but it introduces them to a new set of characters. And for people who maybe are interested more in manga than reading books, like novels and fantasy, maybe that would have interested them, which it has greatly in Japan. And we have it in English and Japanese, which has been awesome. So there's the emerging market for manga in America, but also the very heavily the market that's doing well in Japan. So that's kind of where I came on that.
And so what's the story that we get in the first manga book that you've written?
So that takes place 8 years. The story takes place 8 years before the story of Zephyr the West Wind, and that's just essentially it's a new main character. His name is Ben, and it takes place in a different area, and I did that strategically so that readers and fans who maybe have read Zephyr or will read Zephyr in the future or that series would be able to explore more of the land that was laid out that wasn't explored in Zephyr the West Wind, so they could get more into that world and that universe. And so yeah, it's essentially just about a kid who his sister is kidnapped and his village is economically falling and failing, and he needs to rescue his sister and save his village from a curse.
So who does your animation for that?
By animation, you mean illustration?
For like
I assume?
Yeah, for the illustration, right?
The drawing. Yeah. Well, we have my publisher has several artists. So they essentially work together. There's a team of 3, and there's the main mangaka is what they're called in Japan, and she draws the art. I tell her exactly what to draw, where to draw it, what's going to be there, describe everything, and tell the words, say what the word bubbles are going to be, the speech bubbles. Other than that, she just draws all of it.
Really? How cool is it? So do you get one story at a time, or how many blocks of images does she send over before you say, okay, I like this one, I don't like this one, they look at me the wrong way, or I don't like the hair on this character? What goes into all of that makes you happy as the creator of this?
Well, it's just as long. So it's a 2-part process in terms of like the fact that I actually have to come up with the story, exactly what the characters are saying, how they look, what the scene is going to be like, I actually come up with how many boxes they're going to be on per page. So each page is generally from 3 to 5 boxes of, scenes and characters in each box. And I have to decide all that. That takes a couple of weeks actually, usually, to just come up with like a chapter or 2. And they're usually about 21 pages per each chapter, which is,
wow.
30, 40 boxes. And there can be a lot of scenes, a lot of things could be happening in each of these scenes. So it makes it very complicated for the artist. So half the time it's me trying to come up with all the stuff, so I pinpoint everything exactly. I give examples of what I want and what it's going to look like, and then the other half is me waiting to hear back and get back the art. And once I get back the art, she usually, what's so fantastic about the head mangaka that I work with is that she kind of sees my vision. She sees it very well. And so she rarely has points where I'm like, hey, I don't really like that, or that's not what I wanted them to look like. She pretty much has everything spot on most of the time. There have only been a couple of times where that's happened. But usually that takes about for her to do each chapter.
Wow. I mean, I'm just in awe, because I'll tell you, that is, I am not an artist. If I had to draw a stick figure, you'd come back and say those stick figures need some help, Garrett, because it's impossible. And I've seen some of the artwork for your book, and it really is just spectacular. What was it like when you had that all done? Because when you're writing a book, and I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but you write a book and you go onto your computer or you get your pad and paper out, you write, and then you're done. What was it like when you first got that book back, and you see the collaboration that you have with your other artists, and to say, wow, I've got this great new book here, and because it's a completely different format than I think people would be used to. Was it what was going through your head when you got your first copy?
Well, I guess it's interesting just in the sense that because I've been doing that kind of thing where it's like I've always wanted to do something, or I've always, in the back of my mind I might be into something, and I always be like, oh, I wish I could do that at some point, or it would, you wonder, I wonder what it would be like to actually have that or do that. And that's kind of what I've been doing pretty consistently, and that was kind of just another one of those things. And I mean, I was super excited when I got it. I thought it was awesome. I still think it's awesome. I remember showing some of my family members them examples of what manga was, so that they knew what it was, and some of my friends as well. And I have a lot of friends who actually read that kind of stuff, who aren't Japanese necessarily, but who are really excited as well. And it was an awesome experience, especially when I got the book and I could see all the work that was being done. And I think I was even more excited though once I actually got each chapter back, which is about 2 weeks difference between each chapter. And I remember the first time I got the first chapter back, I was in Disneyland. I was just going around with some family, and I was just super excited. I was like on a ride, waiting to get on this ride, and I was just looking at my email, and that's like all I cared about. I was like, I don't really care about this anymore. I just want to focus on this, and I was like showing everybody. Yeah, so I was really excited.
Oh my gosh, that must have been so thrilling for you. So one of the things that it just shocks me, because I mean, I've always thought of myself as ambitious, and then I met you, and I was like, I really need to pick up my pace, because outside of writing Zephyr, outside of doing this. By the way, if I didn't make it clear, RJ wrote all of the music for his classical CD and had this produced while he's going to college and while he's running his companies and while he's writing his books and while he's doing all of this. So I'm actually not technically convinced that you do sleep. I'm not sure that really ever takes place.
That's funny.
But you had a lot of stuff going on in the last year, and from the time that we met up until now, I mean, you've been pretty much going, like the Energizer Bunny, nonstop. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what's been going on in your world since your last time here on the show?
Yeah, sure. Generally, I can go into some stuff. So I've been, other than Zephyr, which we briefly talked about, I released my second book in that 5-book series, Hugh the Southern Flame, and I have my company, which has been I took a break to write Hugh the Southern Flame from working on my company, and depending on what I plan on necessarily doing in June, I may expand and kind of change up my company in an extreme way, which we'll see how that goes, and hopefully some big stuff will be coming from that. I have a new division in my company, which is called Epic, and that's a consulting firm. I'm going to be releasing another manga. Oh,
RJ, before we go, can you talk a little bit about Epic Consulting? What does that do, and what kind of clients want to work with you, and who do you want to work with when you're out there, taking a look at how you can change the world?
Definitely, Epic. So Epic's focus is on innovative solutions. We come up with solutions to things creatively. We do strategic management, and meaning in the sense that, let's say, you want to have a better management system for your employees or your publicity, your marketing, whatever it is. That's what we focus on. But we also, we have so many services that we offer. We do product development. So, for example, like if you have a product and you have just money to invest in something, but you wanted to make it happen, we'll set it up from the bottom up, whether it's a business or a product. The other day, I was working with a company who I can't actually say the name of, but I was working with them. It was a cupcake company, and we set them up from the bottom up so that they just had the funding for what they wanted to do, and we brought that. We had the place constructed. We bought a lot. We constructed the place. Then we set up branding for it, made sure that we had an audience that was going to be coming to the place on the opening day, and it was fantastic. But we do stuff like that. We pretty much just do anything related that we can help improve in business. So if you need revenue as well, or higher revenue, you want to increase your revenue, we'll focus on that. And we always bring innovation to the table. So we're always thinking of what can be better, what can do more, what can be more efficient.
So now you also work with clients who are expanding internationally, though, as well, don't you?
We work with individuals as well as businesses. So one of my favorite things to do with Epic is then to really to come up with ideas and then actually implement them so that they're actually going to be there being done. And we work with companies that are trying to expand, nationally or internationally, into new places, as well as new products. So if you have a product that's big in England, for example, we'll take it and sort it out so that it will be big, hopefully, in America or wherever the target is.
And so I think one of the things that I'm always in awe of you is that you're, besides the fact that I'm not convinced that you sleep, but that your brain is going 24/7 on different ways to either help people think differently, think better, smarter, faster, stronger, all of that. Are you surprised when you walk into companies, because you work with companies like a small business all the way to very large corporations? Are you ever surprised when you walk in and go like, why haven't they thought about this yet? Or what's been something that's been shocking for you that you've walked in to say, okay, we're going to really knock their boots off with this?
Yeah, I mean that happens all the time, or else I probably wouldn't be there, if they were thinking of that stuff. But I think it's because a lot of the time there's a lot of the companies I work with are traditional companies, meaning that they've been around for a long time and they have a standard and they have a culture that's been around, and innovation is always the key, but they kind of get situated in what place they're in, and they stop really thinking of what to do next, but rather how to keep what they have right now. And so that's where I come in, and I'm really trying to figure out what we can do next with what they have and how to make it bigger and better. And although that is always the idea, the goal, what they're doing and what they're saying are sometimes different. And what I mean is in terms of like, let's say they want the company to be more efficient in how they run, how they save money in whatever way that would be. They might be saying that, but sometimes I don't see the actions that are really that's actually happening. Or they'll say, oh, yeah, we need a website or something, and I'm like, I can't believe you don't have a website and it's 2015 and you're a
Right.
business. It's a major market for any company really in 2015 should have a website that is any company. But sometimes they don't, and I'm always shocked by that.
So do you think that part of the charm that you bring to the table, if I could call it that, is the fact that, you're dealing with business owners who are, right, wrong, or indifferent. They're just like, they're swamped just trying to get through their day and, spending time, sitting down and saying, wouldn't it be nice if I had an hour to think about business development or something like that? But, I don't even have a website, so I can't even do this. Are you running into, and I don't want to stereotype people of a certain age, but I would fit into that category of people of a certain age, where you're talking to them and saying, okay, well, what are you doing on Twitter, or how are you maximizing your brand on Instagram? Are you running into, I know you said the website, but do you find that the fact that you do come from, this Gen Y, if that's even fair to say, gives you really this huge advantage over these poor people and these poor companies, because they're just too busy doing day-to-day stuff to even think about doing anything that you would help them with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is also one of the things that resistance-wise I come into is the fact that all that stuff is new. So they're coming into things where it's like, okay, I know what Instagram is, or I think I do, and I've heard of it, but they have, because it's so, their knowledge is so basic about it, they don't really know how they can capitalize on it or how it affects their business specifically. So I come in, and it's not necessarily just newer technology that I'm doing. I'm also doing, the physical side of things, like actually hiring construction or hiring someone to new employees and stuff. But it's also like, how can that be done more efficiently? Can we use LinkedIn, for example, to then get employees and for the job shirts, or hire a new manager, or whatever it would be? Can we check this or that with the internet or not? And making things more efficient, and people to even higher up management in some companies that I've worked with are, I guess, resistant to working out that stuff by themselves, because it's a whole new hassle of new stuff you have to learn, and that takes time, and time which they don't have, like you were saying, which is understandable, and that's what I come in for.
So what do you think, in 20 years or 30 years, RJ, what do you think is going to be, when the new generation of whippersnappers come along, what do you think, just down the road, and I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball here, but what do you think is going to happen when they come in and say, oh, Mr. Tolson, we really think you need to do X, Y, and Z? Do you think that you'll still have that receptive idea to change? Because I would think some of these people that you're coming to meet with, they probably were the ones that were first going into their company saying, I took this college course called Excel, and I know how to do a spreadsheet now, and they probably got a job as a CFO right just walking in the door. Do you think that or I guess what would you do to keep yourself open to that as you starting to get more experience and you get more into the weeds of the things that you're doing?
I think one of the big differences between that generation and this generation and the upcoming one is that although that generation wasn't born into the computers, computers were existing in the 70s, but they weren't born into where they were learning, and essentially their lives involved computers nonstop. And I mean, being 22 now, but also when I had an iPhone at 16 or 15, and I started using computers when I was 4 years old. I used my first computer's Windows 98, and from there it was integrated into kindergarten. Yeah, it was integrated into kindergarten, and we learned how to do all that stuff. We had Macs and everything, and so I think because we're naturally inclined towards that, until that system changes, where maybe it's some totally different type of computer, or there's some new version of what, essentially what the epitome of what social media is, which is the new technology, the new thing. Whatever the next new thing is, once that happens, unless we get involved with it ourselves, we might be stumped a little bit. But I think because we are part of the generation that is like involved in computers with our daily lives, I think it would be kind of difficult for us to kind of get out of that, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. So do you think that actually, you know what? I'm going to save that until we come back. We're halfway through the show. I can't even believe it. Everybody, I'm going to take a real quick commercial break because we have to. It Matters Radio is one of our sponsors for the show, as is Rainbow Brew. I love them both. Hang tight. We're going to be right back with Mr. R.J. Tolson. We're finally going to start talking about Hugh, the Southern Flame. I have so many questions about his book. We'll be right back and get informed.
Welcome to our discussion of It Matters Radio. Our guest today is Angus McWilliams.
Aye, laddie, let's get on with this thing. I'm on my way to a birthday party for Nessie.
You're throwing a birthday party for the Loch Ness Monster?
Well, first of all, it's not a monster. And second of all, I'm talking about niece Nessie. She's a wee bit of a lovely lass.
I see. Well, okay. Angus, can you give us your thoughts on It Matters Radio?
Aye, wonderful people. They had me on a while back to talk about my book.
Your what?
My book. I wrote a book about the adventures in Scotland.
Oh, I see. A book.
That's what I just said. What are you, deaf, man?
It Matters Radio focuses on discovering new talent and bringing important indie artists on the air. Monica, Kenneth, and Carrie offer up meaningful conversation on new music, books, and fun topics. It's unlike any other radio program known to man and woman alike.
You can say that again.
Known to man and woman alike.
Just because I said you can say it again doesn't mean you have to say it again.
I'm just doing my best to show everyone that It Matters Radio basically brings variety, fun, and entertainment with a sincere desire to discover new topics and talent.
Oh, why didn't you just say that?
I just did.
Hey, laddie, remind me when I can listen.
It Matters Radio is on every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
You Americans with your different time zones. We only have one time zone in Scotland.
And that would be?
That would be the time to down a pint or two of ale.
It Matters Radio for the best in conversation, music, books, and entertainment. Join us Thursday evenings at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. Discover the depth, diversity, meaningfulness, caring, guest-focused, friendly, enjoyable atmosphere of It Matters Radio with Ken, Monica, and Carrie.
Oh, that's a mouthful if I ever heard one.
Yes, and I'm going to go brush my teeth now. It Matters Radio.
When it comes to coffee, freshness is queen. That's why Rainbow Brew believes you should have the freshest coffee, roasted to order in small batches and delivered to your door within a couple days. Whether you're purchasing for a coffee shop, restaurant, or home, Rainbow Brew is your one-stop shop for fair trade and organic coffee. Offering many unique blends, including AM 950's own Blue State blend. That's Rainbow Brew, the Queen Bean, a proud sponsor of the Morning Grind. Online at rainbowbrew.com. Brew something good today.
I always love Rainbow Brew because they're out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and when they contacted me about being a sponsor on Rated G Radio, I said, how are we going to sell coffee for you when you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and nobody grows coffee beans there? And they said, Garrett, trust me, we're just going to send you some coffee, and you just try it out, and if you don't like it, that's fine. But they sent me this coffee, and I'm not kidding you. It is absolutely fantastic. I drink it in the morning every day. And if you go to rainbowbrew.com, actually, if you go to their Facebook page and like Rainbow Brew, you can actually get some like $1 off coupons when you go and order online. When you order at rainbowbrew.com, tell them that you heard about them here on Rated G Radio. They will actually do a happy dance in their coffee shop in Minneapolis and then spin around 3 times and then ship out your coffee. Same day. So please do that. We are lucky to be joined tonight by one of the most sought-after, busiest guys in the country, Mr. R.J. Tolson. He's the author, businessman, musician, and oh so much more. But we're here tonight to talk about his new best-selling young adult fantasy book called Hugh, the Southern Flame. And this is book number 2 in the Chaos Chronicles. And I am, like I tell everybody, I don't read the books until the day the author is on the show because I'll just, number one, it won't happen, and number 2, my memory is that of like a dog. You say shiny thing over there, and I forget. So I've spent all day today reading RJ's book. And now that the show is on, it's like I don't want to stop because now I'm getting to all the good stuff, and it's so expertly set up. But without me talking about it all night long, because that will take up the next half hour, RJ, tell us about Hugh, the Southern Flame, the characters in the book, why this was the next book in your series.
Okay, so I guess first things first is that, so Chaos Chronicles is a 5-book series, and as we discussed earlier about Zephyr, that was the first book, and Zephyr was Zephyr the West Wind. The second book, Hugh the Southern Flame, focuses on Hugh, the main character, and because each of the 4 first books actually have their own separate main characters and separate stories, Hugh essentially has nothing to do with Zephyr, unless, of course, you read Zephyr and there are cues to the entire overall series, but it's a different world, different characters, different story. And it starts in a place where the only city in this region or this continent that has electricity is Burst City, and that's where the story takes place, and you find out as you go on why that's the only city that has electricity, what's going on in the world called the Wastelands, which is like a desolate, dangerous area with lots of creatures, fantastical creatures, dangerous stuff, and it's really a story. It's another coming-of-age story for young adult fantasy, like Harry Potter, Hunger Games, and it focuses on Hugh's story himself and building up his own powers and what goes on in his life, as well as what's going on in this grand world. And since I think you've read you've read Zephyr, right, Garrett?
I read Zephyr, and it was awesome. I have to stop you because I have to compliment you and tell you that one of the things that I like about your books is you write in a way that's very easy to read. So if you're a fan of authors who write words you can actually understand and aren't trying to impress themselves with $8 words that they had to look up with a super thesaurus or something like that, RJ's writing is absolutely fantastic. Now, I will also tell you that Hugh and the Southern Flame, I think from a marketing standpoint, I think that you write for the airplane passengers because the words are easy on the page and you have enough spacing between them that you're not going to have anybody, getting a migraine headache reading the book.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things we did specifically. Zephyr's, there were 3 editions of Zephyr, and the second edition we specifically made larger print, like slightly larger print, just enough where people don't have to strain, whatever age they are, they don't have to strain, and it's easier on your eyes. The font my publisher also used is also the easiest on the eyes for tablets, and so we thought, hey, why not? Why wouldn't it be easier on paper as well? It's a sans font, and that's what they actually use on. Yeah, that's what they use on Kindle and other apps.
And so when you got ready to do this as a completely separate book from your 5-part series here, from a creative standpoint, where do you come up with the ideas that, okay, I'm going to write this book about Hugh now, and now I've got this completely different world? Would it be easier for you to say, okay, I'm going to write, Zephyr Part 2 and really just have it be, a 5-part series and we just pick up where, that story leaves off? As a young writer who has a lot going on, what inspiration comes to you that lets you say, I'm going to tackle something just really spectacular and completely different from what I was doing before?
Well, I think that was my goal in the beginning. My goal was that I wanted to make it unique. So instead of reading a story about this one main character in 3 different books and maybe how they evolve and what goes on in their world, I wanted to have a series where you could go to multiple worlds, see multiple characters, and then see how they connect, which is, of course, what happens in the 5th book. And by doing that, you get this whole new story. You might fall in love with Zephyr, you might not like Zephyr, but then you might like Hugh, and you might not like Hugh. So you have one favorite character, or maybe you like all of them, or whatever it is. But they all have their own quirks. They all have different personalities. They have different relations that actually connect you to the character. And I think what that does is it allows the story and the world to be more diverse, but also allows you to connect with it even more because, like I said, you have the soundtracks for both Hugh and Zephyr, and you have the manga spin-off, and that allows the universe to be expanded. So if you're not tired of the universe, then there's a lot more to do in it. And I love that factor. I love being able to expand on characters and develop them and have lots of action and great story that kind of makes you want to read the next chapter each time.
Well, and you're doing that, and so I will tell you, I'm probably going to be up until 3 in the morning again tonight. Going through Hugh, the Southern Flame. Hopefully, I'll be able to finish it by then. But I'm really excited to continue reading. Can you tell us about, let's say, 3 or 4 of the main characters that we're going to find in Hugh, the Southern Flame?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, the main character is Hugh, and the other 2 main characters throughout most of the novel, his name is Carlos, and the other's name is Cloud. An interesting thing on that is that I did name a character after my dog, Cloud, and the other character, Carlos, is a very happy-spirited type character. Most people seem to like him a lot, and he brings a different light to the story.
So do we have any art imitating life or metaphors for the characters with either people you know or circumstances presented to you in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, so Carlos is definitely, he's definitely inspired by one of my good friends. Hugh himself is inspired by one of my oldest and best friends, who I grew up with, and his name is actually Hugh, and so that's the big thing right there. And Cloud himself is inspired by one of my friends as well. Usually lots of the characters are inspired by people. Like, for example, there's a character in Hugh who likes to use the same different words but for the same meaning. So, for example, saying like a double, like saying super twice but with a different word. I know I'm blanking for some reason, but an example would be like, I can't even think of an example, but I'm just blanking. But there are lots of things in there that are inspired by people I know.
Okay, so can I ask you about some of the names in the book, Hugh, the Southern Flame? And by the way, if you want to buy any of RJ's books that are on Amazon, I've got a link to his Amazon page, his author page, right here on Rated G Radio's broadcast for tonight. So all you have to do, you don't have to go to Amazon and try to search them down or any of that. You can. But just go to the link that's on the show page here and click here, and it's going to take you right to RJ's page. So go buy all of his books. The holidays are coming up, so we'll tell you now is the perfect time to buy 10 of each, keep one for yourself, and give 9 away as gifts. So just do that. But in your book, I will tell you, I loved all of the different names that are in here. And then all of a sudden, in, I don't know, it's chapter 5 or 6, you get this character, Larry. Okay, so where do you come up with Larry as a character's name after you have, all these, Cloud and all these other, really cool names, Ruse as character names, and then you got Larry that comes along.
Well, as you know, Larry is not a nice guy, and I was trying to distinguish between those characters, and maybe that was also consciously by having a name that really stood out. But I did actually want him to stand out for sure, and I'm glad that the name was one thing that helped do that. I don't know. I guess sometimes the way I come up with names is really that I wait to feel something, so I don't just say, I'm going to name this character that. It's more of like what's around me that I get, and what kind of resulted and inspired that character. So Carlos, for example, is a French name / word, and it means like land, grand land, and so that and that itself, I just really like the name. Cloud was fantastic because he was inspired by my dog, my best friend. Ruse, I needed something that was, she's a redhead, so that was where the R came from in that, but also Ruse because she was very very clever, and so it was kind of like a play on the word ruse.
I love that.
She would trick.
But I will tell you that as soon as I saw the word Larry for the character's name, because of everything else that was going on, I knew Larry was going to be no good. So it was almost like you telegraphed it with Larry's name. I wanted to think for a second, but anyway, you're going to have to read the book to find out what happens with Larry. But that was interesting. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left in the time that we get to spend together. So I want to understand more about how you do everything in life from a writing standpoint, because while you were writing Hugh the Southern Flame, I know you took a little bit of time off, from your companies. You had a great management team that were helping you there, but you're still going to school full time. You're still doing a bunch of other stuff around the clock, and you're getting ready to graduate, and you're writing your second bestseller in a row. When do you find time to write? And with all of that stuff going on, because this is what gets me. I can be creative, but I've got to be in the zone, and if I'm not in the zone, forget it. You have to be creative pretty much 24 hours a day in everything else that you do. How do you bring that to this book to make it something that's going to be interesting again, when you're doing so many other things during the course of your day?
Well, I think what I do now is that most of the things I do, I find I have a passion for. So in some way, and I'm also helping people, which I love to do. So it's usually a combination of the two. For writing specifically, that's just one of my greatest passions that I've always had since I was a kid. And when I get this great story in my head, I get so involved in it myself. I mean, I wrote the entire very basic plot for Hugh before I finished it and I wrote it. And because I did that beforehand, I was so excited to see, one, how I was going to describe things, because even though I wrote the plot out, which is like, okay, I know what's kind of going to happen, things changed as I wrote it. And I also was able to see how things happened, which I really liked. And it's great just to get involved in the story myself. Like I've been waiting to reread the book myself since it was published, because I want to be able to enjoy it, having forgotten some of the small things I've done in there. Because I enjoyed the story myself, so it was passion. I was passionate about it, but I also enjoy the story myself, so it allows me to really be into it. And as long as I'm into something, whether it's writing at the same time as going to school or studying a language or doing anything, and then it kind of keep myself driven just based on that passion.
Well, okay, you wear me out, so there you go. I need a nap. So when you write Hugh the Southern Flame, I'm sure that every word that you've ever put on a page is absolutely pen perfect the second that you've written it, and you've never needed to edit anything. But for this book, how many? Wouldn't that be nice? How many times did you have to go back after writing the book, either with your editor or on your own, and say, we need to take a look at this?
Well, because Hugh was, I was a little bit late on my deadline a couple times with some of the chapters, and that's because I was doing so much, but also it was I didn't realize the book was going to be so long. It's 30,000 words longer than Zephyr, so Wow. It's 110 or 12,000, and I was wondering to myself, I kept writing each chapter, and originally when I wrote Zephyr, it took about 2 hours per chapter, and I would stay up around like 10 o'clock at night and write it into the night. But when I was writing Hugh, it would take me 3, 4, sometimes like 5 hours to finish a chapter. And I was like, what? I just thought I was writing more slowly, but I was actually just writing a lot more. And from that, because of that, I didn't have as much time to going over it and overing it and checking it. But I also loved the story that was coming up. So when I was with my editor and I was going over it, we talked about plot structure and lots of things, but she loved it as well. And because it took me a total of about 2.5 years really to finish this book, not of just writing, but of really like getting down to it and then writing it took me about 2.5 years. It only took me about 5 months to actually write the story once I actually started writing it. But because of that, because I've been planning it for so long, with the plot details, spelling and grammar is the editor. She really fixes that. But other than that, it wasn't like I had to go back a billion times. But I really, really like how this book turned out.
I do too. So let me ask you this: how do you have a set schedule, that you actually commit to, saying, okay, tonight I'm going to write between this time and that time, and do you stick to that, or is it just kind of like, well, tonight I got some free time. I'm not, there's nothing on Netflix. I think I'll just sit down and write a chapter or two. What's your process? What do you commit to personally?
I think what's nice for me personally is that when I get really involved in this story, so I come up with this great idea and this great character and I want to write it, I can leave myself to the point where I don't have to plan it. Like, I will write it because I'm inspired, and at some point it will come to me very consistently. But what happens is it just takes a lot longer. So with Hugh, with these deadlines, and I was kind of late on some of them, I had to really like buckle down and get it done. And I would set time between, like, let's say I'd start at probably about 11 o'clock, and then I'd finish around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., and I'd be dead tired. But that's essentially the most creative time for me is at night, really late at night. And so I do a lot of the work that I do then anyway. So what I would do is I would get all my work done beforehand so I could focus on the book and writing. But normally with other stuff, like, for example, like the manga, I'm working on another manga actually, and I was able to write some of the plot line and stuff for that while on the plane to Miami, and
wow.
So that worked out. Yeah.
I love that. So, okay, when you have the book done, and as you're holding this fantastic new book, gorgeous cover, by the way, is there a favorite book or chapter that you, or I'd say book, but I mean, part of the book that you look back at? I know you want to go back and reread it, but you look back and go like, that's my favorite chapter. Like maybe a song on your CD going, out of all the 22 tracks on that CD, number 16 is my favorite. Do you have any of those, or do you like them all equally?
Totally. No, there are some chapters I like more. I mean, specifically not necessarily like chapters, but like sections of the book in terms of plot. I definitely love the climax. I think I've gotten lots of compliments on that. Like the last, let's say from like chapter 30 on, people generally like the book, I would assume, but then at that point they really get into it, and which is what it should be, because it's the climax. It's the part where you want to know what's going to happen next, because everything is being resolved, or everything's been building up until then, and that's of course my favorite part. I wrote a chapter for the first time in the fight scene where it doesn't take place between like 1 or 2 or 3 characters. It's an arena type fight scene, so it takes place between like 100 characters, and for me that was like a really cool writing skill to really work on, to see what I could do. And so that's one of my favorite parts, just because it was something new and it was difficult and it was a challenge, but I think it turned out pretty well. And yeah, I think so. I like I said, I do have a couple. I don't want to tell about the last climactic part, just because that would ruin.
You got to read the book. You got to go buy the book and read the book.
And you've got to ruin it. Yeah. It would
So you've got your next anime book that you're working, or the manga. And I'm calling it that because I keep thinking I'm going to call it the wrong thing. But your manga book that you have coming out, what is the status for book 3, and what are your plans for that?
So yeah, I've got the next manga, and that's called Shadow Eater, and that's actually a spin-off series of Hugh the Southern Flame. So like my second book in the fantasy series, and the first, like just to reiterate, is the first manga is a spin-off series of the first book. So they've got their own, both of them have their own soundtracks, both of them have their own spin-off series, and it's cool because in Shadow Eater, you get to see one of the characters that's actually, he's not like a main character in Hugh the Southern Flame, but he is a character you get to see him. Well, he's the main character in the new manga, and we did a poll for that, and we had people, fans say, which character would you like to see more of, and so that's how we came to the conclusion of that. So that's next, and then for the third book in the series, I've been really inspired, and I've been coming up with these great ideas, and the most unique thing about that next book, I guess, in terms of, other than the fact that it's a new story, new characters, new place, is that it's actually going to be a female main character.
I love it.
The first two, so Zephyr and Hugh were obviously males, and then the next character is going to be a female, which is going to be exciting for me to write from a female perspective. I
love it. I think that is fantastic. You see, movies that are out there like the Hunger Games and stuff like that, and I'm all about, I love a good story, and so I don't really care who the heroes or the villains are, as long as they're expertly written. So I will look forward to book number 3. That is for sure. Before I let you go, RJ, can you give us a kind of a roadmap on where you would like people to find you on social media and connect with you, especially about your consulting division that you have?
Sure, yeah. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at RJ Tolson. And then you got my personal website, which is rjtolson.com. You can also just Google me, and most of that stuff should come up pretty easily. And then for Epic, it's theepicconsultingfirm.com. And that is where you can find information about us. Our website is being updated currently, but pretty much it's set, so you should be able to find any information you want. We love working with all sorts of clients. We work in all sorts of industries, from healthcare, construction, general business, to pretty much just anything. So if you want to increase your revenue, you want to market to more people, be out there, expand. If you just have an idea and you're an entrepreneur, or you want to be, and you have an idea and you want it to be built up and you don't know how to do that, those are things that we love doing, and we are good at it, and I promise you that we are. So I hope that you guys will check it out.
I hope so too.
Epic. Yeah.
No, go ahead. It's.
I was just going to say it's theepicconsultingfirm.com.
TheEpicConsultingFirm.com is your number one place for Epic Consulting. Okay, 2 questions for you. Do you have any people you want to give shout-outs to tonight?
Sure. I'll give a shout-out to apparently my number one fan, which is my mom and Eloise, and I will one to my assistant Nolan and my grandfather, and also my secretary Trina. She's probably listening in, and I think we should thank you, Garrett, for your awesome show as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I couldn't do it unless I had great guests and great writers like yourself. Because if it was just me, nobody want to tune in for that. So, last question for you, and then I'm going to let you go. Do you have any last words of wisdom for either writers or creative types? We didn't even touch on your music outside of that. Your new career as a music producer of electronic dance music, which is going crazy. We're going to have to bring you back for a Friday night dance party to talk about that. But for any creative types that are out there, do you have words of wisdom that you can give at your aged of 22, where you've done so many things so successfully in such a short period of time? What would you tell others who are out there who are either in your same generational, or maybe some old folks that are out there that have said, boy, after listening tonight, RJ's changed my life? What would you tell them?
I would tell them 3 things, I guess. And the first is, one, if you want to get something done, then just start doing it. Don't wait. And this is a common phrase, but really just do not wait, and don't give yourself excuses to do other things. Set yourself up. Nowadays, if you want to do something, you can do it, and you always could. But there's just so much technology out there, so many things that really can help you do things. To help you, if you go on Facebook too much, for example, and you're young and you go on Facebook too much, well, then delete your Facebook for a while. Do stuff that is really going to help you, because there's only one life you can live as of right now that we know of. And really, I think people should take advantage of that. The other thing, too, is if you're a creative type and you want to get stuff done in terms of whatever, if you're an artist, if you're a writer, the other thing is, one, you have to do it, but also really do some research. Read up on what's going on in your industry, how you can help yourself. Google is everybody's friend. Well, it's most people's friends, and it can provide a lot of information. So I would suggest doing that. There's no excuse. If you want to get whatever you want done, if you want your dreams to come true, you've got to work towards it. And if you just have a hobby that you want to get active in, Google something and find out how you can start doing it.
Perfect. Everybody, it's been Mr. R.J. Tolson. Go buy his book, Hugh, The Southern Flame, and everything else he's done. You can find that link right there on the show page where it says buy R.J.'s books on Amazon here. Click the here button, and it's going to take you right there. Let's move some merchandise, folks. We're going to be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with Mr. Rob Watson, and we're going to close out the show tonight with a little Christmas tune that might be familiar to viewers that's out there. It's my song called Guess What It's Christmas Time. R.J., thanks for being here. We'll see you real soon.
Thanks, Garrett.
Well, you might not think it's Christmas with the sunshine in the trees. You might not even think of Santa Claus with his dogs down by the beach. Oh, their tails, they are all wagging here to there, and the joyous sounds of barking without care. Bathed and clipped with bells and bows, how they love to lick your nose. And old St. Nicky knew, and guess what? It's Christmas time for you. You might not think it's Christmas without your winter clothes. You might want a tiny puppy or one with a big brown nose. Either way, you'll feel so happy with love from Santa's sleigh and playing with your puppy Christmas Day. Bathed and clipped with bells and bows, how they love to lick your nose. And old St. Nicky knew, and guess what? It's Christmas time for you.
been listening to Rated G Radio.